few weeks back, I redid my bespoke Warband tier list, and a bunch of people got in contact and asked me to go back to that format again and do a tier list, but specifically covering one box, and that is what we are doing today. Welcome to War Games on Toast, all of you lovely people. It's me. It's Toast. How are you all doing today? I am not going to beat around the bush here. This is a tier list video with one guy doing it. It's going to be biased. I'm going to try and stop the bias from overwhelming the video, but there will be biases involved, and it's going to be partially based on vibes, partially based on experience, and don't take it as gospel. There are thousands of tier lists on thousands of subjects, and for the most part, they're a bit of fun. They're a little bit silly. Don't take them all too seriously. That being said, for the most part, I do stand by my decisions and where I put my things, but feel free to let me know in the comments down below how you would do this differently, because I am genuinely interested in what people think about one-box warbands, and basically anything Warcry. It's kind of my thing. But before I dive into the tier list, it's time for a little bit of shilling.
I am shocked. Shocked! Well, not that shocked.
Please consider leaving a like, a comment, and subscribing, as that helps me fight against that dastardly YouTube algorithmic demon. And if you want to help any more tangible way, then please consider signing up to my Patreon or my YouTube members, or using my Element Games affiliate link down below when buying some new Warcry gubbins. A huge shout out to my patrons and members who you can find on screen now. Badoosh. But with all of that out of the way, it's time to get on with the show.
And now for something completely different.
And we are back, and I have redesigned once again my tier list categories, and I've moved away from the gimmick of bread because it doesn't really accurately describe anything. And I think for this one in particular, I think it's really important to differentiate the different warbands, because just saying this thing's S tier doesn't really make sense. Let's actually make this make more sense by labeling them appropriately. For example, boom, right at the top, full-blown comp stompers. These are the one boxes that you can legitimately take to events, maybe not Nova or Adepticon, but to a local event, to local things, to a competitive event, and actually win. And I am not going to lie, there aren't going to be many here. One boxes are going to struggle to actually win events, but this tier exists because some warbands actually can pull that off, and they are going up there. Below that, we have the one boxes who can comp, but are very unlikely to stomp. These are the warbands that you can take a one box of, and you might land somewhere in the middle of the pack. You are very unlikely to actually land in the top bracket of players, but you can absolutely take these guys to the competitive scene, and with enough pilot skill, you might be able to claw yourself up the rankings and maybe land in that top 10%. Below that, we have the middle of the pack laddies. These are the one box warbands who just kind of exist and do what they want to do, and they can absolutely go beyond the scope of just a one box format and do okay. They aren't going to be all that competitive. Below that, we have stick to one box only tier. This is basically for one boxes that can only really function against other one boxes, and the moment you go beyond that, you really start to struggle. And below that, we have not even hiding my bias and my rage tier, and this is the tier where I'm just going to put things I simply do not like, and I will give reasons as to why when relevant, but these guys go down there. So starting off, we have the Skirgan True Blades, and the Skirgan True Blades I think get a pretty bad rap because they're usually on tier lists that compare them to everything else. As a one box though, I have gotten a lot of comments from people saying that the Skirgan True Blades are actually a fantastic warband to learn Warcry with, because they're fairly fast, they're fairly smashy, they've got a fun toy, and their abilities are fairly simplistic, and that is an absolutely fair point to make. But beyond that, I think that the Skirgan True Blades really do exist in this stick to one box only tier. The second you take a one box Skirgan True Blades beyond this, I think you're going to really struggle, because you just don't really have the tools or the abilities to stand out. You really lack utility, and your damage, as interestingly high as it may be on a model-to-model basis, is innately unreliable because their attack stats are so low and the models are fairly squishy. Going on to the Ttic Cohorts. The Ttic Cohorts are interesting because these guys have access to battle traits. Of course, all these guys have access to battle traits now, because they're, of course, naturally monofactioned, and I think that they have potential because their battle trait is so powerful. You do have a few too many of those really bad beasts, right? Not many of the beasts in Ttic Cohort are actually all that good. You only get 2 of your good guys, and that Centaur, the Bone Centaur's a little bit overpriced. But despite that, I think these guys can actually maybe perform a little bit because of that really interesting battle trait. They can really sort of like maybe swing above one box and do fine. Not by much, right? These guys are veering into one box only, but I do think a one box Ttic Cohort could maybe do something. They aren't as bad as the Skirk True Blades. They've definitely got play beyond the complete simplicity of the Skirk True Blades. So going on the Tarantas Brood, Brood are weird because they are actually quite competitive outside of one box, but as a one box, they're going to struggle because you don't get many spider swarms, and spider swarms are really what you're taking Tarantas Brood for. That's their biggest strength, that and their nets. And the actual one box itself is a little bit restrictive, and you get a lot of the things you don't really want to have. So ultimately, I think that the Tarantas Brood, despite being, I think they're actually full-blown competitive as a more open format, in a one-box format, I think these guys should really stick to one box. You know what? No. I think these guys are actually middle of the pack. When I look at Tarantas Brood as a one box, they're definitely above, I think, the Skirk True Blades. They're interesting enough, but their speed does enough to elevate them beyond just that. They've got revivals in faction, a free revive as well now with their battle trait. And they've got action and economy tricks. They've got a lot of, and nets, right? These guys have got a lot of toys in their faction that really help them swing up into more complex warbands. Sadly, I don't really think that the Chaos Legionnaires do all that well. I think the Chaos Legionnaires really fall into the same traps of the Skirk True Blades, is that they just don't have the abilities. They aren't all that interesting to play because of that. They're fantastic just to run for new players because they are so simplistic, but that simplicity really bites them when they go anything beyond one box because they don't have the damage or really the speed or really much going for them beyond just some kind of okay raw stats. To the close of Karanak, these guys are going, not even hiding my bias and rage. I hate the close of Karanak for what Games Workshop have done. I love the models. I love the theme. I have many videos now on Close of Karanak and why I dislike them and why they need a lot of help. They can absolutely do one box format, right? Realistically, they can, but this tier exists for a reason. And these guys are going in that tier because I refuse to hide my bias and rage. These guys are so cool and just so unbelievably bad. They go right down there. Now, Corvus Cabal are interesting because people really undervalue them and underestimate their power, despite the fact I've had several videos, I believe now, talking about how the new Corvus Cabal with their recent changes are so powerful. And I've even proven that time and time again on TTS and in real life at competitive events where I've ran one box Corvus Cabal and absolutely dominated. And I genuinely think Corvus Cabal are full-blown comp stompers because I have stomped comps with them and I've seen more people pick them up and do really well. These guys have a lot of really fun tricks up their sleeves. Their damage is really high, and their Shrike Talons are unbelievably good and catch people out all of the time. They do have their counters and they do have their weaknesses like all warbands, but I don't think they're impactful enough to lower them down below a comp stomp when I have literally comp stomped with them. So that's my reasoning. It's a little bit anecdotal, but that's where they're going. Now on the Scythe Lords, I am historically a massive fan of Scythe Lords. I am still a fan of Scythe Lords, and technically, one box Scythe Lords have actually won major events. So surely they are comp stompers, but no, they really aren't. That guy was an absolute legend. Clearly this guy did a lot of work there to get them into a comp range. I don't think many people could actually do that. Where with Corvus Cabal, I think that they're pretty easy to take to a competitive level. I think Cypher Lords are just next tier, kind of insane to do that. So I think they can actually compete, but they are not likely to stomp. But all of that comes on the idea that the game is the same as it was when Cypher Lords actually did win that event, right? I actually think Cypher Lords go down to middle of the pack laddies. Don't expect to get top 10%. You're looking at middle of the pack, probably at best, more likely being below that. These guys can definitely do more than just sticking to one box. They do have tricks. Their teleport is very powerful, and they have some really fun tricks up their sleeve. So I think they can branch out beyond one box. But I think in the current meta, the way the game currently is, Cypher Lords can't justify a place any higher than middle of the pack, even though they are pretty darn interesting in my eyes. Going on to the Dark Oath Savagers. Dark Oath Savagers are interesting because you get a lot of things you don't really want to use in a one box. This kind of holds them back, but you do get some pretty fun toys like the Slaughterborn and the God Speaker, and I think that these guys could actually be middle of the pack. On the other hand, Vulcan Flameseekers are full-blown comp stompers. These guys, whilst they've had a bit of a blow to their competitive viability in my eyes as the meta's gotten more killy, we have seen one box Vulcan Flameseekers time and time again land high on competitive standings. They've won competitive events time and time again. These guys are really interesting, really dangerous in the right hands, and they undeniably have their issues, but their raw damage output, their pure points efficiency in a one box is so high that they just do work time and time again. They've got the damage, they're somewhat durable, they just do work. These guys are definitely comp stompers. Sadly, Gorgia Morpack have way too many issues to really do much in a one box because these guys are all beasts, right? So in a competitive environment, you tend to have a treasure mission, and these guys basically kind of just lose them, right? They can't do much to stop people just winning a treasure mission because you can't hold them. They've got one guy who can hold them in a one box, and the rest relies on an ability to do that. And then you still just drop it, right? So they're a little bit unreliable in a competitive event. And because of that, I think these guys really do kind of hit this middle of the pack because they will do well. They are wonderfully smashy, but you will get roadblocked. You will get completely just shunted out of competitive viability the second a treasure mission enters your pack, that enters your field of view, that is even in the same county. Like, these guys just crumble that treasure, and their low body count doesn't really help them when it comes to things like objective missions either. So I think middle of the pack is kind of where these guys belong. So Horns of a Shut though, these guys are interesting because these guys are very competitive. They're a very competitive warband, but as a one box, you get a lot of things you don't want. You still get that flame hurler, but you're getting those ruinators, you're getting those demolishers you don't want. And those models really don't do a lot. They're not that durable, and they don't do damage, and they're not that fast, and they don't have that many tricks. You're just relying on that flame hurler. And I think that really just shafts the Horns of a Shut in a way that's just unpleasant, right? In an actual competitive format, right? Running a one box Horns of a Shut, I think will just get you completely stomped to the point where I would actually put these guys into stick to one box, which might be controversial actually, but I'm going to stick with that. So with the Hunters of Panii, I think these guys just land in a stick to one box only, and even then they're not going to do all that well. These guys are just squishy, they don't have damage, they're very fast, but you've got a lot of things you don't want, right? You've got 3 of those Ripodactyl things that just aren't good. They just really struggle to do anything in a one box, and since you're running one box, you can't take allies to take advantage of those massive points reductions that you got from FAQs, so they just really struggle. Going on to Iron Golems, I think these guys can comp, but they're unlikely to stomp. I think their warband has the advantage, of course, of having that big Ogre Breacher, but you've got a lot of weird tech pieces within the Iron Golems that you don't really want. You also don't have enough of the things you really, really want to make an Iron Golems this good. Namely, you want a lot of those Legionnaires, or you want a lot of Armators, and you only have one Armator and a limited selection of your T5 chaff. So I think the composition of the one box really holds back the Iron Golems. I think Jade Obelisk ultimately fall into the same trap where the warband itself's kind of okay. They've got a lot of damage, but the actual one box is formatted in a way you don't really get enough of what you want to use, and I think that really holds them back. So much so, I think they actually land themselves in the middle of the pack laddies and not even into the can comp, unlikely to stomp. When it comes to the K-Knight Shadow Stalkers, I legitimately think these guys are unbelievably bad. You don't get enough of any of the good stuff. The only good thing in K-Knight Shadow Stalkers are your Doomfire Warlocks, right? And you get like 1 in the whole box and a whole bunch of chaff. I'm going to put these guys in behind my Bison Rage. It's just not a good box in my eyes. I am not a fan of that at all. On the other hand, Monster Killers, full-blown comp stompers. These guys are so good. Such unbelievably good, high damage, high impact abilities. These guys just walk in, just smash your face, and that's all there is to it. These guys are really fun to use, and they're really good to boot. Definitely full-blown comp stompers. Sadly, the Pyregeists, not so much. I do think Pyregeists get a very unfair reputation as being unbelievably bad. I don't think these guys are actually stick to one box only, and this could be controversial. I actually think that the one box of Pyregeist is actually one of the better ways to run them, which is bizarre to think about. I think that a one box Pyregeists can actually be middle of the pack laddies. I've seen many players now play Pyregeist in real life tournaments and do surprisingly well just running a one box. They never comp stomp. They never get anywhere near to stomping a comp. But they do okay, and I think that really puts them into this middle of the pack laddies and beyond the scope of just stick to one box. And I don't have any rage for them. I actually quite like Pyregeists, so they don't go down here into the unbiased rage. They're definitely on par with things like the Ttic Cohort, who are also here, right? Idrilin Riverblades, not even hiding my bias and rage. I hate the Idrilin Riverblades with a burning passion. I had a pretty negative review of them when they first came out, and my rage has only gotten greater as time has gone on. These guys have one good feature, that is their leader, and even their leader is ultimately not even all that good because it just fucking dies, and everything else is just unimpactful and bland. It is a bad one box, it's a bad faction. My rage will never subside. They go down here, and until they get a full rework, these guys will never leave. I cannot stand them. That being said, Rockmire Creed, I'm a pretty big fan of. The one box, sadly, you don't get enough of the things you really want to run. Again, it's the one box format. You get a lot of carry and catchers, whilst you really kind of want more bloated ones. But that one box is still kind of fine. I think that a one box Rockmire Creed does kind of hit the middle of the pack laddie and hits it pretty well. On the other hand, the RBF. So RBF are a very competitive warband. They are incredibly powerful, and they do stomp comps. But with one box, you get a lot of things you don't want to use, and you don't get to take the things you really want, which is more barons and more chaff. You don't really want the bigger ghouls. You don't really want the evil zombie monkeys, right? So because of the format of their box, I think these guys definitely move down to can comp and unlikely to stomp. The Scions of Flame are interesting as well. These guys have a fair amount of chaff. They've got that okay mid-range in there. You've got that Brazen Champion. You've got the big Brazen Lord, right? These are pretty decent picks. You've got the Immolator. You've got the Priest. You've got a lot of fun toys in there. I don't think they're on the same tier of one-box competitive viability as RBF or the Iron Golems. So I'm going to lob these guys in the middle of the pack laddies. They are definitely playable. They're definitely playable beyond one box, but I don't think they quite make the jump into can comp, unlikely to stomp. The Spire Tyrants, I think, sadly, fall into a similar trap. The Spire Tyrants are a very powerful warband. They have access to those best ego destroyers. They have access to Nest. Their leader's absolutely fine. The issue is you don't get enough of anything you want. You only get one best ego destroyer, and you kind of want like 3 or 4 of them, right? I think they can do okay. I am tempted to stick them into just do one box because they don't have many abilities that really help elevate them. And when the models are so unoptimized in their one box, it really shafts them in a way that's just like kind of feels bad. But they do have nets, right? And that bit of utility already puts them above and beyond the other things in stick to one box. So I think the access to those nets kind of helps them. So the Splintered Fang, a one box Fang, you have again too many things that are unoptimal, things you don't want to take. Namely, you don't want to take the Venom Bloods, and you don't want to take those Serpents. And because of the unfortunate composition of the box, you can't build a bunch of shield guys. Most of your chaff are toughness 3 and not toughness 4 as a result. And all of this holds them back, despite the fact they have great abilities, and the Trueblood being one of the best heroes in Warcry, period. But yeah, their one box is a little bit underwhelming from a competitive perspective, to the point where I think, again, we lower these guys into middle of the pack. I think that a non-one box Splintered Fang is absolutely can comp, unlikely to stomp tier, but one box I don't think has the chops to really to elevate themselves to that, sadly. Onto Unmade. Unmade are wildly underrated as a warband. They have a lot of really fun tricks up their sleeves, and their models are really, really fun to use, but they have glaring issues. Namely, their leader is way too expensive. Now, in a one-box format, the cost of your leader really doesn't matter. You're just taking that one box. So it really does not matter in the slightest. But that being said, they need allies to really claw themselves out of the rut that the Unmade exist in. But they don't deserve to be in this one-box tier. I think these guys, again, we've got a lot of guys in the middle of the pack laddies. But there's a reason for that, right? The Unmade are here because, like everyone else here, they are either reasonably killy or they have some strong utility, and the Unmade hit that second camp perfectly because all their guys have nets. That's it. That's enough to elevate you from one box to beyond, because you will just wreck people sometimes because you just have nets everywhere. You cannot escape them, and I think that does elevate them quite nicely. The Twist Wield... The Twist Wield are weird. Their one box is not great. They're just a kind of a weird warband. Their leader is wonderful. I can't remember much of their utility. They've got a lot of AoE stuff, if I recall correctly. A lot of like weird damage and like weird ways of dealing damage to things. And their battle traits may be fine if you squint really hard. I'm just going to plonk these guys into stick to one box. I think that's really where they belong. I'm going to put these guys into stick to one box. I don't have enough experience with the Twist Wield. I've played them a fair amount when they first came out, but time has passed and I haven't played them competitively, and I haven't seen people play them competitively to really gauge their power. And frankly, there's been a lot of negativity surrounding them. So I am going to submit to the will of the general community, and I'm going to play this one safe and just put these guys on a tentative stick to one box only, because who even plays Twist Wield, right? Not that great. Untamed Beasts. Untamed Beasts are fun. Again, I think Untamed Beasts would have likely been into a stick to one box only for a while, but their battle trait has really helped elevate them, being able to use their worthy prey ability with access to things like the first Fang, which is a wonderfully powerful piece. The Rock Tusk Prowl is pretty good. The Hearty is pretty good, right? So I definitely think these guys land in that like middle of the pack laddies. And of course, they've got utility. The first Fang with that pull is fantastic utility. And they've got Burst with their Pounce. Big fan. And I'm, again, there's positive bias here. I play Untamed Beasts at the minute quite heavily, and I like them a lot. I don't think they can really justifiably be placed any higher. But I definitely don't think they deserve to be any lower than middle of the pack. And Ttic Cohort Hunters. Ttic Cohort Hunters are a pain because, again, they don't have all the toys you need to really make a powerful list. The Ttic Cohort Hunters are such a bizarre mix of things you don't really want in your list if you're trying to be competitive in a one-box thing. And I think in a similar vein to the Hunters of Panii, who suffer the same fate as being a harrying, somewhat mobile, ranged faction that requires a lot of dedication to building a very specific list. Like, I think they just fall into that same trap of sticking to one box only. And once again, apparently I forgot to put the frickin' Questor Soulsworn into the lineup. I put Questor Soulsworn. Let's pretend they're here. Questor Soulsworn are full-blown comp stomp. In a one-box setup, you've got access to your battle trait, and that battle trait is hilarious. There are so many ways to build a one-box Questor. They've got so many powerful utility pieces. Their abilities are really strong. Like, yeah, Questor Soulsworn definitely fit up there with the full-blown comp stompers. And that's the tier list. And I think now that it's all done, I think it looks pretty healthy, right? The fact that there's so many one-boxes I have deemed in my endless wisdom to be middle of the pack laddies, I think shows some healthy vibes within the game. Like sure, these middle of the pack lads aren't going to win events, but you should know that going into an event with a one box. Warcry is a list building game. There's so much goes into the list building process that taking a one box and expecting to win is a tall order. But the fact that so many, I think, have the potential to not just function in a stick to one box only format and actually have the chops to land that middle of the pack, I think is a testament to how okay the game currently is. Of course, we do have some things that I think can be competitive, and again, that's also healthy, right? Taking Corvus Cabal, taking Flameseekers, taking Monster Killers, you might stomp those local comps, right? And sure, I do have 3 things in the bias rage tier, but you know, that's a bit of fun. Like realistically, all 3 of these like land in a stick to 1 box. Honestly, but I don't work that way. These guys get their own little pit of hell to exist in, hopefully never to escape. Although actually, Knight Shadow Stalkers, you move up. I don't actually have hatred for you. Your box is bad, but I don't actually have rage or hate in my heart towards you. I do for the other 2. They can stay there. They can burn. They're gone forever. They stay there. They will never leave until I see some serious updates that fix these guys up. They're residing in, you know what, screw it, in straight up hell tier. You know what? You know what? Boned by Nagash tier. Boom. Nailed it. Nailed it. And that's the end of this video. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of my tier list. Do you agree with my placements? Do you have any contentions with anything I've said or placed? And remember, this is largely just a little bit of fun. I don't really believe in tier lists as a way of accurately portraying much, frankly. It's always just a little bit of fun. But I think that I have done a fairly good job in accurately portraying the state of 1 boxes going into competitive. Let me know if you agree or not. Until next time, lads, ladies, and everybody in between and beyond, ta-ra.
Groovy.
Hey all, and welcome to the post-toast credits. A massive shouts out to my algorithmic demon slayers, Andy Morris, blah blah blah, the Head Knight of Paint, Heinz D, Long Run Hobbies, Lord Phylax, Maps, Sable Saber, Steph, Steve Bean, the Houston Toad, Tough Tootin' Baby, and Velas. A huge thank you for supporting the channel, and I will catch you all next time. Ta-ra!